When purchasing a new reptile, knowing where that animal came from is one of the most important things that you could possibly find out. Knowing whether it was wild caught, farm hatched or captive hatched, or captive born and bred could be the difference between owning a happy and healthy animal or an animal that is always sick. In this video, we're going to cover all of that and determine which source is the best one for you to get your reptile from. My name's Pierce LaValle, this is Pierce's Planet, stick around. Yo, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing amazing. I am joined today by my Burmese python Sherbert, and Sherbert just shed and she looks amazing. And man, guys, she is just growing so fast. I can't believe it. Today's video topic, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important video topics that I have covered on my channel. And that is the difference between wild caught, farm hatched, and captive born and bred reptiles. I think that today's video is super important because it is something that you're going to experience every time you go to buy a new reptile. So let's just jump right into it and let's talk about wild caught individuals. So if you're in a reptile shop and you see that an animal is wild caught, what that means is exactly that. That animal was taken directly from the wild, transported to wherever it's supposed to go for the reptile trade. Getting a wild caught reptile is not something that I recommend, and I'm gonna kind of give you guys the reasons why. The first reason why is because a lot of wild caught reptiles tend to have health issues. The animals that are collected from the wild tend to have a lot of health issues, and they tend to be riddled with parasites such as mites and ticks and things that you really don't want to have to deal with. So it takes a lot of work when you're dealing with a wild caught reptile to try to cure these health ailments that they have and rid them of all these different parasites that they're going to be bringing in to your collection. These health problems are only enhanced by the conditions that these animals are kept in when they are being captured. They're being transported by the hundreds or thousands overseas, long periods of time without adequate food, water, and heating, and it's not a very sanitary environment for these animals to be in, and a lot of these wild caught animals don't even make it to their destinations and they die before they can even get there. Because of all the health ailments that they could possibly have and the conditions that they're being shipped in, the animals that actually do make it to their destinations are already pretty vulnerable and susceptible to changes in environment. And so that makes wild caught animals a lot harder to keep alive and a lot harder to thrive for you. You gotta think, these animals, they're already adapted to the environment that they were born into and that they were living in before they were snatched from that environment. And so a lot of these wild caught individuals, even if they make it to their destination, they don't tend to live very long after that because they can't adapt quick enough to their new environment in order to survive. These animals in the wild also were eating a specific kind of prey. And so when you bring them over here into the captive environment, you're completely switching up their diet. And you may think, oh, well, snakes love rats, all snakes eat rats. But a certain snake in the wild might have thrived off of frogs or lizards, and then you're bringing them into this captive environment and trying to feed them rodents. Well, it's not really going to work out too well. Think of it like this, think of it if you lived in Miami your whole life and you ate burgers almost every day, and that was your main food source. And then someone just picked you up and moved you to Greenland and put you indoors and put a heater on and then tried to feed you broccoli. It would take you a while to adapt to that. And that's kind of the same thing for snakes like this. Just, don't feed your snake broccoli. That was just a metaphor, if you didn't catch that. No broccoli for your snakes. Although I wish snakes could eat broccoli, because that'd be a lot easier for me to feed them than feed them rats, because I do like rats too. I used to have pet rats, and we're getting off on a little tangent here, so let's get back to the video. Another thing to think about when dealing with a wild-caught individual is that they tend to be more temperamental. You gotta realize these animals are coming straight from the wild, where naturally someone like a human is a predator, and they gotta be on their P's and Q's in order to survive. So these animals most likely are not going to be buddy-buddy with you at first. Not to mention, in some cases, they just got off of a 12-hour flight where they were crammed into this little box with no food or water. Yeah, they might be a little angry. You know, I already know what my girlfriend's like when she doesn't eat lunch. So I can only imagine what some of these animals are like after not eating for, you know, a week or more and being crammed into these little boxes and put on a 12-hour flight. Yeah, you wouldn't be happy either. And lastly, one of the most important reasons why I think you probably shouldn't purchase wild-caught reptiles is the fact that it's hurting their wild population. We live in a time where we're seeing species go extinct at a record pace. And so we don't need to be putting any more pressure on these species by taking them out of the wild for our own selfish pleasures. Wild-caught reptiles do tend to be a lot cheaper than captive-bred animals, but in all honesty, if you're just getting an animal because it's cheaper, that's not a real great reason to get a wild-caught animal. And I would say save the extra $100, save up, you know, save your next paycheck, save your allowance or whatever, and just wait to get a captive-bred animal. With that being said, there is one way that I think you could justify owning a wild-caught individual, and that was if you had two and you planned on breeding them to create more captives. All the reptiles that we have today, they had to come from somewhere. They all came from wild specimens that got brought in. So having wild-caught individuals is somewhat necessary, but we want to try to limit it and regulate it as much as we possibly can. We have enough ball pythons, okay? We don't need to be taking more ball pythons out of the wild and bringing them over here for the pet trade. We have enough. We have breeders who breed them. If you're going to take ball pythons out of the wild and bring them over here just to breed them to create more captives, I think that's stupid. I think that's pointless. But if you're bringing something like, I don't know, like a dragon snake. You know, if you're bringing a dragon snake over here and you know how to take care of them and you want to create more dragon snakes that are captive bred that you could sell and establish a captive population, then I can kind of justify that. So when you're looking for a new reptile, you might come across some other terms, and those terms are farm bred or farm hatched or captive hatched. When I would look for animals, the captive hatched name kind of stuck out to me because I thought, oh, that must be better than wild caught because it's a captive. I was thinking that they were captive bred, and that is not the case. So what farm hatched or captive hatched means is that somebody went out to the wild and got a gravid female or a pregnant female, brought them into captivity, and while they were in captivity, they gave birth. So the babies of that female are technically captive, but their mother was pregnant with them in the wild. Farm hatched and captive hatched individuals tend to have a lot of the same problems as wild caught individuals. For one, they could potentially have some health issues or some parasites that have been passed down from their mother. The parents of these animals were not captives, and these babies aren't coming out as captives. They're ready for life in the wild, and they're not really going to be very well suited for life in captivity, at least compared to animals that have been captive born and bred, which we will get into later in the video. They're still going to have that wild temperament. They don't have that selective breeding through years and years of trying to get more docile animals. These animals are still basically essentially wild. When you're taking a mother out of the wild when she's already pregnant and her babies are being hatched in captivity, instead of being hatched and repopulating the wild population, it does kind of hurt that wild population a little bit and can be pretty detrimental to their wild numbers. Like wild-caught individuals, captive hatched individuals tend to be on the cheaper side, but again, that's not a reason why you should get one. And honestly, in my opinion, same rules apply to captive hatched that did with wild-caught, and that is, don't get one unless you plan on breeding them to create a captive population. I'm really not the biggest fan of of taking a gravid female out of the wild and then taking her babies and selling them. Some people might think of that as hypocritical because they see me with a Burmese python, but like I said, all of my animals are captive born and bred, which we are going to get into what that means right now. In my opinion, as you could probably already tell by how this video is trending, captive born and bred and captive bred reptiles are the way to go, and those are the reptiles that I think that you should be buying when you go to pet stores, and that you should be making sure that you're getting them from reputable sources. Captive bred and captive born and bred are a little bit different, and I'm going to explain that really quickly. So captive bred means that the two parents could have been from the wild, but somebody brought them over or bought them, imported, and then bred them. But the female wasn't already gravid when she was taken from the wild, but when the person who owns them bred her with a male, and then the babies came out. God damn it.
That
Captive born and bred means that the parents were at least captive born, and then the babies that resulted were captive born and bred. So why is captive born and bred so good, and why do I recommend it so highly? And the reason for this is simple. It's pretty much the opposite of everything I just mentioned for the last two. And so we'll start with the health, and captive born and bred animals are usually a lot healthier. They were born and bred in a captive environment, regulated environment. Somebody was watching over them, taking care of them themselves. And if you get them from a reputable breeder, they're going to make sure that they're not selling you a sick animal. Captive born and bred animals are also usually kept in better conditions. And I use the term usually. Now, I know there's a lot of people that, you know, like to slam breeders and like to say that breeders are horrible and breeders are the devil, and you know, I don't really agree with that. I'm going to make sure that I make a video on greeters, not Walmart greeters. I'm gonna make sure that I make a video on breeders soon to kind of explain that. But when you compare the conditions that breeders have their animals in compared to the conditions that these animals that get taken from the wild are in when they're first being removed from the wild, it's like night and day. Almost 100% of the time, the conditions that a breeder keeps their animals in is going to be 10 times better than the conditions that an animal from the wild is living in on its way to its destination. Another reason why captive born and bred animals are the better choice is because they're already suited for a captive environment. A lot of these animals could be 4th, 5th generation animals, and so their parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents all lived in captivity and are suited for a captive life. They just seem to be a lot more hardy when they're coming from captivity versus coming straight directly from the wild. And along the same lines as that is that their temperaments are usually better. Breeders selectively breed for things like temperament and health. And finally, last but certainly not least, when you support breeders, you're also supporting conservation. And what I mean by that is you're helping reduce the stress on the wild populations when you don't take animals from the wild. So by buying animals from breeders, you're actually supporting conservation by not hurting the wild populations. In a lot of cases, we need these captive populations in order to revitalize wild populations if that becomes necessary in the future. You know, something like, and I'm just using this as an example, something like a Burmese python, which probably won't go extinct anytime soon, but if it were to go extinct, which I think it might even be threatened in its natural habitat, not in Florida. But if something like a Burmese python were to go extinct in its natural habitat, well, we have captive specimens that we can breed and reproduce and hopefully repopulate and revitalize that wild population. The only con that I could really think of about captive born and bred animals is that they're more expensive, but who cares? Who cares if you're spending 100 extra bucks so that an animal doesn't have to get taken out of its natural habitat? If you truly love these animals, then you'll spend that extra $100 to get a captive bred animal instead of hurting its wild population. It's just as simple as that. And if money is just truthfully an issue for you, then you can always adopt. There's plenty of reptiles that need great homes. So in my opinion, if you're gonna get a pet reptile, make sure you ask if it was captive bred, and if it was, then go for it. If it wasn't, then really consider trying to find that same animal as a captive bred specimen. It will really help the environment, it helps with conservation, and I just don't think you could go wrong with it. So that is it for today, you guys. What did you guys think about this video? Do you guys agree with how I feel about captive born and bred animals versus wild caught animals? Did you guys know anything about farm hatched animals before this video? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and please, please, please share this video. Until next time, everybody, my name is Pierce LaValle. This is Sherbert. We are in Pierce's Planet, and remember, it's all about the reps, baby. Peace. When purchasing a new reptile, I don't know what that was. I had to put her on the channel. God damn it. I'm not like a scientist. I don't really know what the fancy words are for, you know, like, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. I'm hungry. What's up, baby?
Are you in the middle of your video?
I am, baby.
You look hella cute.
In this video, we're going to... Say hi to the camera.
Hey.
You might make it on the video. Alright, clear your mind. Clear your mind and the rest will follow.
I'm his inspiration in case anybody's wondering, you know.
Okay, let's not go there. Alright, baby. God damn it, dude. Why can't I think today?